Todd Bowles pulls a Lee Corso on Clyde Christensen and why that should make Kyle Trask fans very excited for football in August. A player of focus at the Buccaneers rookie minicamp this past weekend. And I give you my 2022 win-loss prediction for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All that right now on the Locked On Bucs podcast.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation? Welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we thank you for making us your first listen or view every single day. I am David Harrison, my co-host James Yarcho, not here today, but you can find him covering your Buccaneers at bucsnation.com, a part of SB Nation. And you can find my written work at bucsgameday.com, a part of Sports Illustrated. And when we aren't there or here, you can find us on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. We thank you again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listen review every single day. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Todd Bowles might be telling Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Clyde Christensen to pump the brakes a little bit on his assertions that Kyle Trask is not competing for the backup quarterback job in Tampa. Last week, leading up to the team's rookie minicamp, Clyde Christensen, the quarterback coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was asked about Kyle Trask and his status on the team. And Christensen called Trask a developmental quarterback, but didn't quite fully concede that he couldn't take over for Blaine Gabbert, but did say that the odds would be stacked against him in trying to do so. So did Christensen say Trask couldn't be quarterback number two? In my opinion, no, he didn't. He kind of said that Kyle Trask couldn't be quarterback number two in the way that Tom Brady said that he could, or that he was going to retire. Tom Brady never said that he was going to retire. Clyde never really said Trask would not be the number two from what I've seen. Just that it would be really, really hard for him to overcome Blaine Gabbert. And look, I agree with him. I know James and Evan Klosky of WTSP 10 Tampa Bay talked about it last week that, you know, it makes sense. Blaine's been in the league for a really long time and knows the system and is a veteran and kind of helped coach, you know, Kyle Trask up during his rookie season and continues to do so here in his second season. So it makes a lot of sense that Trask just, you know, not because you're a second round draft pick and maybe you're the future of the franchise, we're just going to make you the ceremonial second guy on the depth chart. That doesn't really make sense from an organizational standpoint. Now, I had Scott Smith, the senior writer and editor of Buccaneers.com, on the show for our Thursday episode last week, and we talked about this as well. And Scott admitted that he was a little bit surprised at just how candid Clyde really was about Kyle Trask's status on the team. And almost not really questioned Clyde, you know, that's not what he was doing, but kind of said, you know, when Brady was supposedly not coming back, the team had kind of said that Trask would be able to, or given the opportunity to compete for the starting job. So it's kind of weird that if he's able to compete for the starting job, why can't he then compete for the number two job? And I would say, I think Scott kind of alluded to this as well and kind of touched on this real quick, that with Tom Brady back, you're fully back in Super Bowl mode, right? I mean, Alex Cappa leaves, but Ryan Jensen comes back. You know, Carlton Davis comes back. There's a lot of players coming back now that you kind of figure would not be coming back to Tampa Bay, even as we await word in the final decision on tight end Rob Gronkowski. If Tom Brady's not in Tampa, I don't think Rob Gronkowski is deciding whether or not he's going to play in Tampa. He's deciding whether or not he's going to play for either Buffalo or Cincinnati at this point in time. So I think there's some of the differences right there. If you don't have Brady and you lose Jensen and you lose CD3 and you lose Alex Cappa and you lose Rob Gronkowski and you lose Jordan Whitehead, you're not in full-blown rebuild mode, right? But you are definitely more than reloading at this point in time. So it makes a little bit more sense that maybe you turn the page to the young quarterback who can maybe develop into your future versus rolling with the aged veteran Blaine Gabbert in his stead. So, but with Tom Brady, you now have a team back with all the players that came back because of Tom Brady's return that could help you win a Super Bowl, even if you knock on wood that doesn't happen. But let's say you do have to roll forward without Tom Brady due to an injury or something like that, then it makes sense to have Blaine Gabbert your number two. So to me, it kind of makes sense why you would be more willing to let Trask compete for the starting job without Brady here than you would being willing to let Trask compete for the second job with Brady back. So I think that's kind of where Clyde maybe is coming from. But Todd Bowles told Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times, quote, "There's competition everywhere, so there will be competition at that spot as well," talking about the second quarterback job. continued on. Gabbert finished the season at number 2. We like Blaine. Trask is going to get his chance to play and compete, and if he's better, he'll be number 2. If he's not, he won't be, but he will have a chance to compete. He knows that, and everybody knows that, end quote. So that, my friend, and again, going back to what Clyde said, like, I haven't seen a quote from Clyde yet that said, no, Kyle Trask, no chance he'll be the number 2. Just that the odds are stacked against him, which I think everybody can agree that, the odds of Kyle Trask, 0 snaps, 0 active games in the NFL, overtaking Blaine Gabbert, veteran who knows the offense for years and years, has been in the NFL for years and years. It just kind of is the nature of the beast. Now, what does Todd Bowles, what do Todd Bowles' words mean for this whole situation in Bucs training camp and preseason? Well, it means a couple things, but there's another wrinkle to this whole thing. Greg Auman of The Athletic tweeted out on Sunday, the Bucs are having a second set of joint practices in the 2022 preseason. This one with the Miami Dolphins actually will come first against the Miami Dolphins. Week 1 of training camp, August 7th, I believe. Miami Dolphins will be in town. The Buccaneers and the Dolphins will get some joint practices. Again, this is the second time in 3 years that these two teams have gotten together to do this. During those, they'll do some live reps. They'll actually do some install, all those things that they don't want seen on the preseason football field. Then week 2, the Buccaneers will travel to Nashville. They'll take on the Tennessee Titans, and they'll do joint practices in Nashville with Mike Vrabel and the Titans. So the Buccaneers are getting 2 weeks this offseason, this preseason, doing live practices against another squad. Iron sharpens iron. Instead of running plays against themselves, they're going to run plays against other teams, and they're going to react to plays being run by another team. Now, that is incredibly valuable just in a sense, but the fact that they're doing it twice this year versus once, to me, is very, very substantial. In fact, on a 10 scale, 1 being it doesn't matter at all, 10 being it's very substantial, to me, it's a 10. And some of you guys out there may not agree with me, but let me kind of go through what I'm talking about. For one, the impact of joint practices, you get to install more of your offense and your defense in these joint practices. Why? Because other NFL teams aren't going to see this. They're not going to get recordings of the film. They're not going to see it broadcast on Fox Sports or ESPN or NBC or what have you. It's stuff that you can do that's kind of behind a curtain, right? They get to do that install. That's obviously important. Live reps. Again, the Tennessee Titans linebackers and DBs aren't going to know exactly what Tom Brady and the Buccaneers offense are about to do. So you're getting live reps, live reactions from live opponents who, let's be honest, they want you, like Carlton Davis, he wants to intercept Tom Brady in a training camp practice, right? But he also wants Tom Brady to be successful. I can't even think of Xavier Howard of the Miami Dolphins does not want Tom Brady to be successful, period. In practice, in games, period. He does. That's your opponent. So that's obviously value. And then for me, what this likely leads to is the lack of starters appearing in preseason games. Now, for Buccaneers fans who are going to watch preseason games in the stadium or home, this is a little bit of a downer, right? Because you want to see Tom Brady. But look, if you're getting live reps against the Tennessee Titans defense, the Miami Dolphins defense all week long, 2 or 3 practices, do you really need to play that preseason game? The coaching staff, the quarterback, whoever might decide that no, he doesn't need to play that game. Maybe neither does a Mike Evans. You already got Chris Godwin come back off an injury. Why put Mike Evans out there for a live series when you've already had live practices? It's not full contact, but you've had live practices against a live opponent already. And what this means for what Coach Bowles just said to Rick Stroud, Kyle Trask now stands to get a very, very big increase in his preseason workload. You could see Blaine Gabbert coming out as a starter against the Miami Dolphins. Kyle Trask comes in early, becomes that second quarterback in. You might see Kyle Trask get some starting reps, against the Tennessee Titans in week 2. So Kyle Trask is going to get his opportunities, like Coach Bowles said. The bad side of that for fans, you already get vanilla offenses and defenses in the preseason. With this, if my prediction is correct, and a lot of your starters are going to sit during the preseason, really all 3 games because of these joint practices, you're going to get sugar-free vanilla now. But hashtag Kyle Trask preseason, that's pre-SZN for you Gator fans out there. Plus, plenty of cool practice videos about to happen of Bucs DBs intercepting underthrown passes from Tua Tagovailoa intended for Tyreek Hill. Before we get to those joint practices, those guys, the Bucs have to get through their OTAs, mini camps, and all that. And the rookies and tryout players were in action this past weekend. So we're going to talk about who impressed, and we're going to talk about a player specifically that Mr. Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times was focused on. But first, we're going to talk about our partners at Bet Online, because they continue to impress and continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or your first view every single day for those of you joining us over on YouTube. Wide receiver Jerreth Sterns was a particularly interesting player to watch among Bucs media on hand for the rookie camp over the weekend. We all kind of talked about the wide receiver group leading into the NFL draft, coming out of the major part of the offseason. A lot of people kind of expected the Buccaneers to address the wide receiver position in the NFL draft. They decided not to go that route, whether it was because they just took it off the board altogether. They just didn't have the prospect available that they really wanted to see come to them. But they did have some undrafted free agents, some rookie tryouts and all that stuff at training camp. And Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times obviously had his radar pinged to Mr. Sterns. He wrote a full-blown article we're going to get to in here in a minute. But after the rookie camp, Stroud asked him about Sterns, with Todd Bowles responding, quote, "He's quick. He caught a lot of balls in college. He's quick. He's got very good hands, so he flashes in practice," end quote. Jenna Lane, I believe, was followed up with, asking about him playing taller than he actually is. Coach Bowles responded, quote, "Yeah, he does. You got to be pretty durable. You got to be pretty durable to play and make that many catches," end quote. So who is Jerreth Sterns? Who is this guy that has all these catches? Well, he's a Western Kentucky undrafted free agent. That means he is a hilltopper. He played with quarterback Bailey Zappi. You might remember him from the draft process, the evaluation process. One of the quarterbacks that some people were very excited about. I personally liked him very much. Not, a day two guy by any means, but I thought he had some good potential. Ends up with the New England Patriots. So, of course, we're talking Buccaneers. There's going to be some sort of New England Patriots tie. So why not? Bailey Zappi, quarterback, heading to the New England Patriots. Now, again, Tampa Bay Time Zone, Rick Stroud did write an in-depth kind of piece about Sterns, the wide receiver. Head over to Tampa Bay Times and go ahead and read that. From what I understand, it is not behind a paywall itself, so you can read it even if you don't subscribe. Basically, Stroud kind of profiled him, right? So a big shout out to Rick Stroud for a lot of this information. Western Kentucky wide receiver star. Stroud says became only one of 3 players in the past 2 decades to lead the nation. That's all receivers in college football in receptions. Stern had 150 catches, 1,902 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns in 2021, guys. 17 touchdowns. Now, Western Kentucky, you might be saying, okay, but the level of competition. Well, Stroud points out that Sterns did this against some very, very good teams. 17 catches for 186 yards against Michigan State. 9 catches, 171 yards against Army. Okay, not the greatest competition. 3 touchdowns. I mean, look, 3 touchdowns in any game. I don't care what level of football you're on. 3 touchdowns in any game is very, very impressive. And Stroud points out that the other players, so again, only one of 3 players, right, to have to lead the nation in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. The other 2, Michael Crabtree for the Texas Tech Raiders in 2007, and Alabama's Devonta Smith, who did so with the Alabama Crimson Tide and won a Heisman Trophy because of it. Not saying that Sterns is going to be the next Michael Crabtree or Devonta Smith, but just very interesting company to be in. Sterns was asked about his production at the minicamp, the rookie minicamp over the weekend, and Sterns said, quote, "I've done it at every level. There's always been questions about how big is he, how fast is he. They always put doubts on me." And he continued, "But in my opinion, all I do is produce at every level. At the end of the day, not getting drafted just adds fuel to the fire and made me hungrier." So very impressive story here from this guy. I mean, he's undersized, ran like a 4.5 something 40. So, I mean, the measurables just aren't there from an athletic metric standpoint, but the production cannot be understated. Helped Bailey Zappi put himself on the radar as an NFL draft prospect as well. Now, Todd Bowles was asked specifically about a lot of players, including Andre Anthony, the outside linebacker, 7th round pick out of LSU. He was asked if he had a real good, fighting chance of making the roster, to which, Bowles kind of answered that, yeah, he's got a chance. But honestly, that's, it was a lot of coach speaking. That's basically what you expect out of a rookie minicamp is that he's going to, everybody's got a chance, right? He was asked about Zion McCollum, like his athleticism, his length, and all this other stuff. Asked about some of the other tryout players or undrafted guys. He was asked about Derek Brooks' son, who's a tryout player, linebacker. He's got some intelligence from the family. But look, everybody's had a chance at this stage in the game, and that's exactly what Coach Bowles based said. But really didn't say that any one person kind of stood out, which I think is smart to do, because even if somebody did kind of stand out, again, remember, a lot of these players, the Buccaneers are going to look to try to put these guys on the practice squad. So if you come out here now and you're like, oh yeah, Derek Brooks, his kid looked like an all-pro potential linebacker and but you don't add him to your roster now, he goes somewhere else. maybe turns into the next Cam Brate, another undrafted free agent, or a player similar to that. So, a lot of players worth watching. Now for the wide receiver group, right? You also have some receiver question or some return game questions, whether or not that'll happen. But, again, just an interesting story, if anything, from Stearns again, the wide receiver out of Western Kentucky, Jarrett Stearns, who obviously caught the eye of Rick Stroud. Rick's been around for quite a while. He's been covering the Buccaneers for quite a while. So if he's got Rick's eye, no reason he shouldn't have everybody's eye. Some of your eyes were tuned to James on Thursday night as he fired off a live episode here of the Locked On Bucs podcast, going over the schedule release and the predictions. And he gave his game-to-game, quarter-by-quarter, final standing win-loss predictions way too early. We'll do them again, don't worry. But shout out to everyone who joined James for that live schedule reveal episode. I wasn't there, so I'm going to give some thoughts of my predictions coming up here. But first, let's hear from two friends, including the first one, a member of Bucs Nation.
Woo-wee. Hey, boys. Jordan calling over here in St. Petersburg, Florida. First-time caller, long-time fan for the Bucs. So just looking in right now, I mean, man, Dallas at first, and got Kansas City prime time, Baltimore prime time, Seattle prime time, New Orleans prime time. It's going to be a hell of a game here, baby. Let's go.
All right, Jordan, we appreciate the phone call, appreciate the excitement. And hopefully you guys are just as excited for the schedule, but also excited about some birthday cake frosting. Imagine dipping your finger into a plastic tub of birthday cake frosting. Who hasn't done that at some point in their life? But imagine doing that, opening your eyes and realizing it was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein were packed in that scoop of frosting. That is what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. I just got my birthday cake puffs this weekend, and I'll tell you, I'm not usually a big fan of birthday cake flavored items. It's just not really my style, but those were very, very good. They're available right now, and we can't promise that they will be there tomorrow, so go get them today at Built.com. My daughter's boyfriend, also a big fan. He comes to our house often and raids my Built Bar drawer, so I'm pretty sure he's very happy whenever Built hooks us up with some of those new flavors come out. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you in on a little secret because that's what friends do. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar, guys. You heard me correctly. A delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% chocolate. Make every day your birthday with Built's birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake and robed it in 100% white chocolate and added sprinkles. It's 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and only 9 grams of sugar. The limited time flavor is an amazing option if you're looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety into your day. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. So go to Built.com to get birthday cake puffs right now. Again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Final segment of the Locked On Bucs podcast, my season schedule review and predictions. Again, shout out to all of you who joined James on Thursday night for his live reveal of the schedule and his predictions. For those who maybe didn't or just don't remember, James has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going 14-3. He's got a 4-game win streak in there, a 3-game win streak in there, and then a 6-game win streak also in there during the season. So those will be some very good stretches there for members of Bucs Nation. You guys will have a lot to celebrate. So let's break down my final record projection and my game-by-game win-loss projection. So kicking it all off in Dallas, week 1, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in prime time against Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. I've got the Buccaneers winning that game. James also has them winning that game. And then you stay on the road and you head from Dallas, you go to New Orleans, first road game in the division of the year. And I've got the Buccaneers losing that game. James also has them losing that game. Look, guys, just until we prove that the Saints don't have the Buccaneers numbers, it's kind of hard to predict against the New Orleans Saints in this situation. So the Buccaneers come out of the gates 1-1 in the first 2 weeks of the season. Week 3, back home in back-to-back games, week 3 and week 4, Green Bay Packers, Kansas City Chiefs coming to town. James has the Buccaneers winning both of those games. I also have them winning both of those games. So we both have the Buccaneers 3-1 through 4 games of the season. Now going into the second quarter of the year, the Atlanta Falcons come to town for a 3rd straight home game. We have them winning those games. And then you have a road trip to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a road trip to the Carolina Panthers, and then at home to the Baltimore Ravens. James and I both win win. All they do is win. So there is your 6-game win streak. Both James Yarcho and I predicting a 6-game win streak after a 1-1 start. The Buccaneers 7-1 heading into a home matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. And again, it's kind of hard. The Rams beat them in the regular season last year. They beat them in the playoffs. Kind of hard to go against that. So we both have losses there as well. 7-2 at that point, heading to Germany, where the Buccaneers have never won and Tom Brady has never lost, and the NFL has never played a regular season game. Tom Brady stays undefeated. The NFL has their regular season game in Munich, Germany, and the Buccaneers get their first international win, advance to 8-2, heading into the bye week with losses coming against the Rams and the Saints. Come out of the bye week, you're on the road against the Cleveland Browns. We both have them winning that game, and then you're back home against the New Orleans Saints, and they finally get off the side. Tom Brady gets himself a regular season win against the New Orleans Saints before he retires as a Buccaneer anyway, 10-2 at that point in the season. This is really, right now, James and I are we're the exact same. This is where we differ. At San Francisco, James has the Buccaneers losing that game. I have the Buccaneers winning that game. So I have the team improving to 11-2 while James has them dropping to 10-3 the very next week versus the Cincinnati Bengals. I have them losing that game. James has them winning back that game. So we get back on an 11-3 track there, back neck and neck, are the exact same parallel records, just a different way. Look, I told James this, my Cincinnati Bengals prediction, really not based off the fact that, the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. They got Alex Kappa. I do think the Bengals are a better team this year than they were last year, but I also think the AFC is better this year than last year. So I don't know that the Bengals are going to have such a good run this year compared to last year, but I like to watch the world burn a little bit, right? The NFL really wants Patrick Mahomes to kind of be the heir to the throne to the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady's of the world. So you see Tom Brady beats the Kansas City Chiefs, earlier in this. So Patrick Mahomes continues to fail in his NFL-driven efforts to supplant Tom Brady as the next-rate quarterback. So I kind of want to see what happens if Joe Burrow is able to come into Tampa and do what Patrick Mahomes can't, and that is beat Tom Brady. I want to see, is the NFL going to pivot and now turn to Joe Burrow being the next, great quarterback in the NFL? I don't know. That's why I'm not going to lie here. That's my analysis of why they're going to lose this game. Again, way too early projection. So we'll get into better analysis as we move forward. Final 3 games of the year: Christmas Day in Arizona against the Cardinals, and then back home against Carolina Panthers before a Week 18 trip to Atlanta. James and I both have the Buccaneers winning all 3 of those games. Guys, we both have them going 14-3. That's both our projections. We did not make these at the same time. He didn't know my picks before he made his. I didn't know his picks before I made mine. That is the honest to God scout's honor. I'm not a scout, but that is what it is. That's the truth. 14-3, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we have for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that's what I have for today's episode. So we thank you again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or your first view every single day. So now make your second view or listen to Locked On NFL podcast. The schedule may be dark, but the NFL never stops, and neither does Locked On NFL. Get insights and opinions from hosts including Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, and Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Saints, Locked On Steelers, and Locked On Jags podcasts, plus local Locked On NFL hosts, repping all 32 squads, including myself, who is on today's episode of the Locked On NFL podcast, talking about Tom Brady's fat Fox Sports contract. There's no offseason for the real fans, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. We will be back. If you want to get into the conversation or you want to have be a part of the discussion like Jordan was, send in your voicemails or your thoughts to lockedonbucks@gmail.com or call in and be a part of the show by dialing 813-444-5841. For James Yarcho, until we speak again, make sure you're checking out everything we're writing. James over at bucksnation.com. I am over at bucksgameday.com. Find us on Twitter at dharrison82, at jyarcho_bucks, and at Locked On Bucs. And finally, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, wash your hands, fire those cannons. Thank you for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.